Madison, what's up?
What's up, Max? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
All good here.
Thanks for bringing me on your channel, and thanks for encouraging me to facilitate this conversation. We're gonna, what we're gonna talk about today.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for coming on. For people who are new or not new to my channel, I just want to bring Max on. Max has done a lot of the work with me the last 6 months, and he's just super curious about this kind of work, and he's just here to ask me today about it's things that have been on his mind, things he's curious about
Yes.
spirituality, largely healing, and everything that affects our personal life based on these things.
Exactly, and also, Madison's always talking about wanting to get on camera more and sharing his ideas, and I'm always encouraging him to do that. So I think this is a good opportunity to do that.
Exactly.
I'm really curious to dig deeper into the whole spirituality thing, and I've been introduced to it a couple years ago. I'd like to know, just from your perspective, first of all, really quickly, how would you describe what you do to people?
Sure. So I call myself a spiritual coach, and I'm a healer. And I work with a lot of different entrepreneurs, executives, coaches, and I really help them on their spiritual journey, which is it's largely an internal journey, how they feel inside, the kind of blocks and internal mental dialogue that they face every day in their life. And I help them make that easier for them, letting go of mostly their hard traumas, their emotions that are in their way, and help just making things lighter and easier for them in their life, their relationships, and their business.
All right, so Madison, and I think a lot of people, I don't know, I think there's a lot of different reactions from people when they hear the word spirituality. I know for myself, I got into sort of the psychological realm of healing. When I was feeling unwell or I was feeling anxious or depressed, I went into trying to seek therapy, get into meditation, exercise, a bunch of different modalities. Spirituality always felt like this very foreign thing to me, and it always kind of felt woo-woo, and it didn't really feel grounded in reality. Now that I'm in it, I know there's actually like a real practical component to it, but I wanted to get your definition on spirituality. Like, how do you look at it? How do you define it? What would you say?
Yeah, some people might say, I'm not really into spirituality, but we're all spiritual beings. So obviously, we're both raised Jewish, right? And we work with a lot of Christians, Muslims, and we're all spiritual beings. But spirituality really becomes this thing once we start recognizing that there's something beyond the physical world.
Right.
And that's where things start to get interesting. And we realize that somehow the thoughts and energy we put out, that there's something bigger to the reason and intellect that we're so accustomed to in the West. And it's really just that opening up to that there's greater possibilities, that there's a saying that, as above, so below. Meaning that the things that we do in the physical realm affect the metaphysical. And it's really that interplay of starting to see that there's something beyond what we can see that actually has a tremendous effect on our life and the way we feel.
Awesome. So I kind of want to bring it back to just something a little bit more practical in terms of like the symptoms that people feel when they come to you, right? So like one of the symptoms, for example, I just want to get your perspective as a spiritual advisor, as someone who works on energy healing. I want to get your perspective on how to deal with these sort of everyday symptoms and struggles that people have. I think that would be really interesting and helpful. So the first thing I want to ask you is, because this is a common one that people ask, is how do I stop procrastinating? So from sort of a spiritual perspective, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, so often people, they can find out that they're self-reflective enough of their behavior. They see that, hey, I've been on my phone for 3 hours and I got all this work to do. I've got a business to run, and yet they find themselves avoiding the things that need to get done. And they're not really sure why. And, there's maybe all sorts of outside answers, but the spiritual work, it's all that internal work. So the question is, well, why are they avoiding the work that needs to be done? What is the resistance? And when you can take people and dive them deep into the subconscious mind, and you get into their fears. Well, what is it that you're afraid of doing this project for? Maybe they're procrastinating, getting on camera, or saying something that needs to be said. And so the first question we want to ask when we're procrastinating is we want to go within and ask ourselves, what is it that we're really afraid of? Because maybe that project, maybe we're afraid of failing if we start it. Maybe we become over perfectionistic and to avoid feeling that failure. And maybe if we fail, that'll make us bring up old feelings that we're not good enough. And then we'll have to deal with those demons. So the procrastination is just there to essentially escape from feeling what we don't want to feel, which is already inside.
So we're just avoiding ourselves, essentially. We're avoiding the feelings, avoiding the pain.
Yes.
We don't want to face those things.
Yes, and so it's procrastination is largely escapism, where we're trying to avoid having to face the feelings that we know we might face if we embark on the thing that we need to do, and that's what the resistance is. And that fear, it usually it's irrational in some form. We're trying to protect ourselves, but that fear holds us back, and so whatever it is, we need to be able to actually have the tools to go within and confront it, and move past it and break through it.
So what would you say to someone who's really struggling with procrastination? Let's say they know they want to start this business, they know they want to start this project, they know they have all these different things to do, go to the gym, whatever it is, but they're procrastinating. And what would you say to them in terms of taking the first steps to deal with that?
Yeah, the main reason people find themselves procrastinating and avoiding and neglecting the things they know they need to get done, but they just can't seem to find themselves doing it, is that often there's things internally that they don't want to face. And that usually comes back to our fears. If they start a project, they don't want to be afraid that they're going to fail, or afraid that, if they have to get on camera and they're resisting that they'll be judged, or whatever it is. And so it's really those deep internal fears that are the barriers. It's that internal blockages, that mental block that really prevents them from doing what they know needs to be done. So they find themselves over scrolling on social media for 3 hours rather than working on their business, or just avoid themselves saying the things that they know needs to be said. It's because there's fear involved.
Right.
And the spiritual practice is largely about it's overcoming that fear and learning how to deal with it, learning how to break through it, transform it. And when you can do that, that's where you find freedom. That's when you find the ability to trust yourself, and knowing that your word, if you say you're going to do something, is committed and that you're going to follow through with it. But the procrastination really is symptomatic of us just not facing some kind of internal fear.
Right. So step one is facing the fear. Step one is sitting with yourself.
Yeah, the first step to overcoming procrastination is that we need to become honest with ourselves, that there's something within us that is resistant because of a fear that we have. And once we can realize that we have a fear, we can actually drop into it. Fear is an actual emotion, which means we can face it. It's an energy. So when you can sit with that fear and you can face it fully and head on, you're able to transform it,
right,
to break through it.
Beautiful. And on that topic of procrastination, I think a lot of people who have procrastination have this ruminating voice in their head that says, I feel stuck and I can't seem to reach my potential. I feel stuck. I can't reach my potential. How do I reach my potential? I'm feeling really stuck right now. How do you interpret that from a spiritual perspective?
Yeah, when people say they feel stuck and they're having a hard time reaching their potential, it's because there's things that are weighing them down. Often when you can really drop into their subconscious, things from their past are affecting them. They're biting them left and right with their old thoughts, saying that, hey, they're not good enough to do that. They're not worthy. And if they were to step on it, and often a lot of the people I do work with are extremely successful, and yet they still feel like an imposter because some part of them says, hey, you weren't supposed to get there. You weren't worthy of it. My parents said this wasn't right. And then comes the guilt and all sorts of other emotions that take us back.
And would you say that's the same thing for people who say, I'm playing it small? I know I'm playing it small, because even I've had that belief before. Like, I know I'm capable of so much more. I'll have those moments where I think, you know what, my potential is limitless and I'm really playing it small. How do I access that potential within me?
Yeah, when we're playing it small, and we got to be honest with ourselves, when we find ourselves playing it small, we're choosing that. And so why are we choosing to play it small? Well, it's convenient, it's easy, it's safe, we don't have to avoid failure. But if you're an entrepreneur, if you're really trying to do incredible big things in the world, then you got to get big. You got to expand, in spirit and body.
Yeah.
And when you can do that, that's when your business expands. Now, why don't we do that? Why isn't it so easy? And why aren't we all, doing giant TED Talks around the world and flying private jets and all the things we want to be doing? Is we're afraid. We're afraid that we're going to fail. We're afraid that people will judge us if we get too big. Some of us are afraid of our own success. Will people like us then? Will they leave us? And will that leave us with old traumas that we had in childhood, that we'll be alone again, things like that. So there's all sorts of fears that come up when we're trying to expand. But largely what happens, if you do find yourself feeling small, that's a great first step, because before any expansion, there's a contraction.
Right.
And so if you can lean into that smallness, meaning you can actually sit with those emotions that are keeping you small and making the choices to be small, you can let that go. That's the first key to unlocking expansion and stepping into your real potential, your real power.
Beautiful. Switching subjects just a little bit here, I still want to touch on some of the symptoms as to why people would come to you and why people are stuck in pain or anxiety or whatever it is. I know a lot of people have come to you about relationships. And people say, I just got out of a relationship and I'm really hurt. Or, Madison, I just feel like I'm not attracting the right partner. How do I do that? And what would you say to that? If someone's coming to your advice from a spiritual perspective and saying, I just don't seem to be attracting the right people. I don't seem to be attracting the right partner. What do I do?
Yeah, when people come to me and say, they're not attracting the right partner, it's often because there's, we attract what we are. That's the, like attracts like in the universe. So if you find yourself attracting someone who's, really not up to your standards, or not the best person for you spiritually or emotionally, romantically, that means that there's something within you that's attracting that, and we got to address that. And that's what we call, in this line of work, emotional or energetic blockages. So, for example, maybe we feel we're unworthy of it. And if we feel unworthy or not good enough, we're going to attract a partner that reflects that within us, and that actually brings that out in us. And the reason that works in the universe is the universe wants to make us whole. And it's giving us all sorts of opportunities to heal. So much so that we might attract a business partner, a client, a romantic partner that actually helps bring us out that unworthiness, that not good enough. But only if we're able to actually drop into ourself within our body, feel and heal and release those emotions that bring that out within us. And when you can do the healing work and let go of those energetic blocks, and you're feeling confident, you're feeling whole, truly feeling whole, being honest with yourself and feeling worthy, that's when you bring in everyone else that reflects that. And, whether it's the business partners romantically. So it's really about finding your own inner wholeness and allowing the outside world to be a reflection of that.
Right. So if we're feeling something like unworthy and we're attracting a partner that reflects that in us, would you say the first step to overcoming that is by just accepting that and feeling the unworthiness? Because it seems counterintuitive to some people.
Yeah, so...
Right? I'm going to feel this feeling that is painful to me. How is that going to help me?
So the way we can let go of feeling unworthy and actually transform it is we got to face it. So our whole minds are geared and conditioned to the opposite, to run away from it, to blow ourselves big up with pride and ego. And ironically, what we got to do is the opposite. And when we can actually face that unworthiness, which means to feel it completely, and that's going to seem counterintuitive, as you said.
Yeah.
But when we can actually face it fully, we see that it's an illusion.
Yeah.
All fear is an illusion. And so when you can face it fully and be with it, it dissolves, because it's your light, which is the truth of you, which is so powerful that when you face that darkness within yourself, that lower energy, it dissolves and it no longer has power over you.
Yeah. It's really an amazing thing, actually, and I can attest to the power in that, being able to do a lot of this work with Madison and letting go of anger and sadness and a lot of guilt and shame. And it felt very, very counterintuitive, like intellectually, what I'm going to feel this guilt and shame, and that's what's going to help me release it. Well, it's true, because like you said, once you feel it, then it doesn't hold that power over you. It doesn't hold that weight over you anymore. So it's just like, it's just a part of me, and I don't need to hold on to it. I think that's what clicked for me, Madison, was realizing that when I feel it, I don't actually have to hold on to it.
One of the greatest paradoxes in the whole personal development realm, right, is we're all trying to grow, get bigger, be more confident. And often we think if we keep knocking that door, right, being more positive, that's how we get there. But what I found and what my clients have found in the work is that it doesn't stay. And so just going more and more towards the light and the love, why doesn't it always stay? Well, we need to do what's called the shadow work, which is going towards the parts of ourselves that are not in alignment with that and actually transforming that and letting that go.
Right. I want to stay on the subject relationships, but you did bring up an interesting point that I think I want to ask you about around, because you hear this a lot, positive thinking. You hear people say, well, just think positive. It's all good. Just honestly, you need to do your mantras in the morning. everything's amazing, everything's okay, I'm awesome, and just think positively. What do you think about that mindset? What do you think about that sort of way of living?
Positive things is obviously incredibly helpful for, directing our life, getting our spirits up. But there's a certain point where it turns into self-denial, and we actually have to realize that there's actual things within us that do not feel that way. And rather than just direct ourselves more towards the love and light, we can actually direct our awareness to those negative emotions within us. And we actually go through it and let it go. Then when that negativity is no longer in our body, it's no longer in our minds and our hearts, that's when we start thinking more positive. So the approach to thinking more positively is not just to think more and more positively, it's just to let go of the negativity. We're already born feeling positive and feeling loving, compassionate, and kind. But it's just that negative trauma and suffering that we hold on to subconsciously so deeply that keeps us within the darkness and within negative. So we can face that and actually actively bring it to our conscious awareness and let it go. That's when we start to feel better, feel lighter, and it affects our thoughts, and we start to manifest better and raise our energy, our vibration.
Love it. I love how we're getting right into the depth of things right now too. Like I was telling Madison before we started this, I'm like, we'll start off a little light and then we'll get into like the deep stuff. But I like how we're already there because it's all deep stuff and it's all meaningful stuff. So let's get right into the depth of it all. So I love it. Just still based on the relationship subject, you'll have people come to you and say, I've been single for a while. I don't find myself wanting to get out there. I kind of feel like a hermit. I don't have the motivation to date. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, when we find ourselves, not wanting to date, not getting out and, seeing people, hiding, and staying alone, it's because ultimately we're afraid. So honestly, in our hearts, we're loving, connecting beings. We want to, have incredible romantic relationships otherwise. But it's that fear that holds us back. And there's various forms of that fear, right? But ultimately, what our greatest fear is we don't want to be alone. We don't want to go out and get rejected and feel alone again. A lot of us have these early abandonment traumas that, we don't ever want to suffer that again. Because abandonment is kind of, on the next door of death. And for a lot of us, that scares the living hell out of us. So it's easier to play it safe, to play it small, rather than to face our fears and open our hearts up and actually get out there and start meeting people. And that requires us to be vulnerable. That requires us to be ourselves. And that's scary for a lot of us because we're afraid of that rejection. And so the transformation work is largely about learning how to deal with fear and move through it and, let it go.
Okay, so you think a lot of this is subconscious? Because people will tell you, no, I want to date. I want to date. That's what they'll say. I want to date. Like I know intellectually that I want a partner. I want to be in a relationship, but I just don't have the motivation to get out there. Is that something subconscious?
That's brilliant. So most people consciously say to themselves they want to date, and maybe they even take the actions to do that. But what most of us are unaware of is our subconscious, and that maybe we consciously want to do something, but yet somehow we find within our words, our actions, and our energy that we kind of don't fully want to. And we call that resistance. So resistance is when we consciously want to do something, but subconsciously, some part of us, maybe it's small, maybe it's a child part of us, actually wants something else. And that part that we're not aware of is often afraid of what can happen. So maybe you want to consciously get out there, open your heart, go on and meet amazing women or men. But there's some part of us secretly in the background that is hiding, if we're being honest with ourselves, and is afraid of being rejected, afraid of what can happen to us. And so we play it small, and we find ourselves not being in line with our conscious actions and our words.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Do you ever have people come up to you and say, Madison, how do I be more attractive? How do I get more attractive? I know it seems completely out of your realm when we're dealing with spirituality. People think that's a lot of deep inner work, but from my perspective, someone who does that inner work, there's a radiance to them, right? You can see when someone's feeling good about themselves and they shine and they hold themselves differently, they carry themselves differently, they smile, like there's a real glow. So how would you answer that question if someone says, how do I make myself more attractive?
Yeah, people come to me all the time because energy work can make you more attractive, really. So much in our society, we're seeking to be more beautiful, whether it's the clothes we wear, the watches, the cars. But really, it's us as people, our energy, that's attractive. I've got guys in the venture capital realm that come to me because they're looking to do business dealings with really incredibly wealthy people. And they want to have that charisma, that energy, that light that people are just attracted to when they enter a room. And it's so powerful, more than anything else. It's that energy that's contagious. And so whether it's a dating context or a business, it's our energy that ultimately people, they want. That's so fascinating and so interesting, is it's our energy and powerful. And yeah, largely the way to have more attractive energy is we got to let it go of the unsexy energy. So what's that look like?
Yeah.
Well, largely that's the suppressed trauma that we don't even know what we're carrying around. All that needy energy that says, please like me and I want your approval. And if most of us are really honest, whether we're in dating or in business, there's some part of us from our childhood that still wants that within people, still seeks that. But the more that we want other people and desire them, we're not secure within ourselves. And that's fundamentally what's not attractive. Mm-hmm. So the way to feel really attractive, to feel grounded and centered as a man or a woman, is you got to do the healing work. Mm-hmm. You got to be in harmony. So we're all energy. Yeah, we have a body. That body's made of cells, which are made out of nucleus, which is made of protons and neutrons, which is energy, if you want to break it down. But that energy is fundamentally, it's how we feel inside.
Right.
So you can go on and you can put on a smile in a beautiful room, a cocktail party. But in the end, people can pick up, are you sad? Are you feeling down? Are you really happy? And people that, hide it, well, it's even worse. And it's people, a lot of us spend a lot of our life wearing these masks, trying to prop up how we feel. But if you can actually go within and be honest and drop into yourself and find where you don't feel great and move through that, heal, let that go. You can transform that and feel more positive and feel more lighter. That's when you feel more attractive. And being more attractive is natural because it's authentically you.
Right. And would you say that's ultimately what gets someone to like you? Not that that should necessarily be the goal, but I know a lot of people will say, like, how do I get this person to like me? I want this person to like me. You got to like yourself first before someone likes you. But what would you say to that?
Yeah, a lot of people, they want to answer the question, how do I get someone to like me? Whether it's in a dating context or through texting. So if you take texting, right, often, when it comes to, we're waiting for them to reply back and we're trying to figure out the right thing to say, or craft the right words, almost as if it's a spell. But if we do that, we're already losing because we're already coming from insecurity. We're already coming from neediness and a lack of wholeness. But when we can truly let go of needing anything, from a desire perspective, a neediness perspective, and we can become whole, grateful for what we already have, then people pick that up. We don't need something from the outside world. And that's very powerful. That's very centered and grounding and very attractive.
When people ask me for dating advice, because people sometimes ask me for dating advice, they'll say, my number one thing usually is like, hey, don't go in trying to get them to like you. Go in, learn about them, and try to see what you like about them, right? And just sort of like reverse the roles there. Like, we shouldn't be going into dating trying to get someone to like us. We should be there connecting and seeing if we actually genuinely like these people and we connect with them. And just shifting that paradigm, I feel, is super helpful.
Yeah, the paradigm of how we think about ourselves to the rest of the world is going to be everything as far as how attractive we are and what we can get from life. If we walk into a room and all of our thoughts are thinking about what do people think of me, how do they think about how I'm dressed, how I'm acting, then we're giving our power away to them. We're giving our worth away and the power to them to judge us. But if you can walk into a room and you realize that you're the creator here, and you really take ownership, and that you're there as the main centerpiece, not in an egotistical way, but just that you're the center of your world, which is true. We're all suns.
Yeah.
We're all radiating our own energy, our own light, and that's your job, is to own that sun within you. And when you can walk into that room and radiate your own light just by being you, not needing to worry or care what anyone else thinks, and then that's what people are actually looking for, because it feels good. Rather than for someone to actually come up to you and subconscious saying, hey, I need you, I want you. And that's what a lot of us are giving off when we don't actually heal our traumas, really.
Right. Now, you see a lot of this stuff online. I feel like a popular word right now is confidence. Not just right now, but always. Like, there's guys who teach confidence, and there's these pickup coaches and dating coaches, and it's all about confidence and having Riz. Have you heard that term? Riz?
Yes.
Right? It's like, if someone came up to you and said, how do I gain confidence? How do I just get more confidence? What would you say to them? And how does that differ from sort of the modern definition of confidence, where it might just be like, hey, you need to say this and posture up and be a little bit more charming? Like, what would you say is the difference?
Yeah, the way most of the personal development world works right now about how to gain confidence is it's about, propping yourself up, making yourself bigger than you actually are. And a lot of that comes with, the self-inflation of the ego, and we even physically doing it as men, getting falsely bigger and changing your actual physical posture. But that's not true confidence. A lot of the confidence that, is being circulated today on social media and programs, it's egoic confidence. It's largely comes across as arrogant and narcissistic. But real confidence, it's not in the head. It's actually, you feel it in the heart, you feel it in your solar plexus. You can actually feel it in your body. And it's grounded in your being and in your worth. And so if we want to feel more confident, we need to figure out where in our life that we're not feeling confident. And if we can actually do the opposite, rather than just keep propping ourselves up in our minds, if we can actually feel and go to the source within our body, and within our body we hold the trauma of where we feel less than, or we feel like a failure, or we feel that we're not good enough. If you can actually physically move through that energy, find it in your body and let it go, which, from the times in your life that you felt less than, that's how you can get your worth back. That's how you can move through things. So it's just like almost uninstalling a program that says you're not confident. So rather than, this false posturing, you can actually just let go of times in your life where you picked up different emotions that have kept you in a paradigm and identity that feels unconfident.
Awesome. Now, based on what you just said, because I love what you just said, true confidence you feel in your body. You really feel it in your body, in your stomach, in your chest, in your heart, which I think leads to an interesting question around healing. So you just talked about relationships. We just talked about confidence and feeling true confidence. We feel it really. We really feel it in our body, in our stomach, in our chest, in our heart. So I guess my next question for you is, how do we open our hearts? How do we open our hearts? And what does it mean? I should start with that. What does it mean to open our hearts? And how do we do it?
Yeah, most men come to me because ultimately their hearts are closed. They don't know this, but ultimately they're stuck in their heads, their minds, and if they're in their head, their minds, then they're not in their heart. So what it means to open your heart is we actually got to face the blockages that keep it closed. So when we're closing our hearts, it means that we're not open to love again. We're not open to the possibility that we might be rejected. And so to open our heart is the actual healing work of going within and releasing core emotions that are actually physically stuck in our heart, that they get trapped there. These emotions can be grief that we've experienced in life, and old sadness, and feeling lonely. It can be anger that's in our heart, the rage and anger that we've had towards people in our life. And so opening a heart is an actual physical, energetical thing that we need to do. So when you can let go of the hate that you may have for even yourself or for other people, you can let that anger actually physiologically go and release from your heart. You can release the sadness and the grief that's in your heart, and even the fear that's in your heart, to open to love and to know yourself. That's how you can open your heart. And so it's actually letting go of what it's called the heart wall in the healing world. And a heart wall it's a protective wall that we create in front of our heart so that no one can touch us. No one can make us feel that pain again. But the reality is they still do. If we're really honest with stuff, we're still suffering inside. And if we're closed hearts and we have that wall up, then we also can't experience the beautiful part of having a heart, which is to love and to give, receive, and to connect with people. So to open our hearts, we actually got to face the emotions that are trapped in there.
Amazing. And, would you say that like most men that you come across have some version of a heart wall, or their hearts are closed? Like, would you say that's one of the most common things that you see? Like, and is this really a huge key and component to happiness and living a fulfilling, joyful life?
The greatest thing that we can do as men, or anyone really, is to open our hearts. And if we're being honest with ourselves, most people, our hearts are not fully open. Yes, we can give and receive love, most of us, but we have so many blockages. There's so much more love and expansiveness that we can have in our hearts. And so what we got to do is we got to do the healing work to let go of the ways in which our heart's closed, in which it's been scarred in the past by failure, by past grievances, by angers. We got to let that stuff go to open our heart.
And so what does that look like? What does that healing path to opening the heart look like? What is that healing path?
So for most of us, we're so out of touch with our emotions. That's why we're completely out of touch with our heart. So a lot of us, we're conditioned to be in our head, and we think with our intellect. That's how we, probably even are watching this, analyzing it, but with your mind. But how many of us are actually, putting our consciousness and awareness when you're watching this in your heart? Are you really listening with your heart, or is it your head? And so we want to listen with our heart. We need to actually actively put our attention and our awareness in our heart. It's a different consciousness. And when we can listen from our heart, we can actually feel and have compassion with people. And, it's an entirely different paradigm of communication. But the hardest thing about being in our hearts is that that's where we don't want to be, because that's where the pain is. Most of us, we hold the pain within our hearts. And so it's easier to move to the head and live in our fantasies and live into our intellect and to overanalyze things. So if we want to go back and open up our hearts, we need to go back from living in our heads to back into the body. Now, the road to do that is challenging, because that's where the pain is stored and the emotions within our heart. So that's where we're going to have to face old fears and grievances and angers and sadness. But if you can do that and you can embark on that journey, you can find yourself living in your heart again, feeling safe there, rather than the false safety of your head and your mind.
Yeah. Speaking of living in your mind and feeling fear, would you say that heart wall, would you describe that as fear? And if so, what would you say is our biggest fear? Like, what are our biggest fears?
Yeah, the heart wall that covers our heart is largely fear.
Okay.
There's only really two emotions in the world. There's love and there's fear. One of those you are, which is love. And if there's something that's in our vibrational field within ourselves that's not us, it's fear. So when you can go within your heart and let go of the fear, that's when you can open back up to love.
Okay. Beautiful. What would you say, from all the work that you've done, everything that you've seen, what our biggest fears are? Can you actually define what the different fears are? What are they? How do they usually show up? What are the symptoms? How do you look at fear?
The biggest fears we face when opening our hearts is it's largely that we're going to get rejected. So there's two options. It sounds so silly. Why would we not open up our heart to all the love and connection that we could have in the world?
Right.
So why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah.
Well, it's because in the subconscious, in the back of the mind, there is a very rational fear that we're really afraid of. And if we open our hearts too much, maybe people would judge us. And that doesn't seem so bad. But what if people judge us and they reject us? What's going to happen to us? Well, often what our greatest fear is it's a fear of being alone. That if we make the wrong mistake, we say the wrong thing, we open our heart up and we're not good enough, we're going to be alone. And the reason that's so fearful is that our greatest fear really is not just to be alone, but it's to be abandoned and to be left from the tribe, left from the family. And if that happens, primitively speaking, we die. So, it's not, it's a very rational decision that, hey, I'd rather feel small and close my heart and keep to myself than to be in full expansiveness and love, because I want to play it safe.
Right. That's big. So, this sort of goes along with fear, but I think a huge problem for a lot of people is they'll say, I've got a lot of anxiety. I either live with anxiety or I get bouts of anxiety. Anxiety comes upon me when I'm doing work. Sometimes it comes on me randomly. Sometimes it comes upon me when I'm speaking with certain family members. How do I get rid of my anxiety? And how would you address that question? And you sort of touched on it, but...
Yeah, most people are trying to get rid of their anxiety, and that's how they approach it, right? They treat it as something that they're trying to push away. But with the way that, this works is what we resist persists. And that anxiety is trying to teach us something about the way that we actually feel. So anxiety it's just a form of fear, and it's an anticipation of the future. So if we want to get rid of anxiety, we need to dig a bit deeper. Well, what is it that we're anxious about? What are we really afraid of? And we can go deep within those fears at their root and actually cut them off and break through them. We don't need the anxieties.
Right.
We can feel at peace within ourselves, within our body, where there's nothing to fear. But the anxiety is just that surface level symptom it's physiological, right? We feel that anxiety, right? And what we try to do is we try to medicate ourselves, push it down. But all anxiety is it's a beautiful message. And it's trying to get us to be aware of something deep within us that we fear. And if we can actually face that fear, break through it, the illusion of it, we set ourselves free and anxiety goes. And it's so much more simpler than people think.
I'm just meditating on it. You know, because would you say anxiety is more of a mental thing? Like, would you say, because you can feel anxiety in your body, but there's also sort of a mental component to it because you're trying to intellectualize your way out of it. Now, based on that, if someone came to you and said, like, Madison, I know I'm living in my head. I'm just living in my head all the time. How do I get more into my body? How do I get more into my heart, into my intuition, my gut, my center, and stop living so much in my head?
Yeah, the way we get, you know, if we find ourselves overthinking or trapped in our head within our own thoughts, it's because ultimately we're not feeling our own emotions. So you can think of an emotion as producing 1,000 different thoughts. All thoughts are going to be connected to an emotion that we feel. If you're really having thoughts that are, you know, oh, this person did this and did this, then you're feeling an emotion of anger. But if we're not feeling that emotion, and those emotions are in the body, then it's going to keep us stuck in our head. So the first thing we need to do if we want to get out of our head, the mental chatter, is we got to get into our emotional world, which is the language of the heart. And so when we can get into our own emotions and actually sit with ourselves, not run away, but really just sit with ourselves, our own emotions, the stuff we probably don't want to face, but just to do it, to face it, and we can let go of that emotional heaviness, then the chatter starts to go away. We can drop out of the mind into the body and feel at home and feel safe there.
When we start dropping out of the mind and into the body, and we start releasing some of those emotions that have sort of we're suffering with, would you say that's the pathway to loving ourselves? As you said, it kind of feels that you mentioned the word home. We come back home to ourselves, we drop into ourselves. Because a lot of times people will ask me, and you hear this a lot, it's like, how do I love myself? I just need to love myself. I want to love myself. Would you say that's part of the pathway of doing so?
Yeah, the pathway back to self-love is coming back home to yourself. So often, you know, you can often think of in healing, well, what's the opposite of self-love? Well, it's self-hate. So what is self-hate is we're just carrying emotions of hate within our heart at ourself. Old things that we punish ourselves for day in and day out. Could have been 10, 15 years ago. Things that we don't forgive ourselves for, we hold ourselves accountable to in negative ways and just weigh ourselves down. So the first step to really loving yourself is, well, how about let go of you hating yourself? Let go of the anger that you hold in your heart against yourself and the ways in which you punish yourself with suppressed guilt and shame and the negative thinking you have at yourself. But you can actually let go of those emotions that we subconsciously hold that on ourselves. And often we do that to make ourselves better, right? We think that we're going to change, we hate ourselves into being better. But that's not self-love, it's self-punishment, and it's not the best path to greater freedom and, to love.
It also, some of it sounds so simple. It sounds so simple when you really break it down, and two words come to mind for me. Self-acceptance and honesty. It sounds like this is a big part of the process, and the letting go process, and the healing process, and this whole journey is just being honest with yourself. And I think a lot of us have trouble being honest with ourselves and saying, I hate myself, or there's a part of me that hates myself. So that self-acceptance, just accepting all of those negative emotions within you, and just being honest about it, looking at yourself in the mirror, sitting down and saying to yourself, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this pain, I'm feeling this hate toward myself. How important are those two things in your world, in self-acceptance and just radical honesty?
That's a crucial breakdown, right? The self-acceptance and the radical honesty about how we feel about ourselves. You know, it's our egos and say, oh yeah, I love myself, I do this for myself. But if most of us are being honest, if we are suffering in some way, whether it's emotionally, physically, disease, yeah, there's a part of us that subconsciously is resisting ourselves and our greatness, and actually does actively hate ourselves. And the way to change anything in life is to first accept it. Change cannot happen if you do not accept it. And when you can accept something, you can transform it. You can let it go. You can move past it. But we have to be honest with ourselves that there's a part of us that holds herself down in a very negative way, so much so that we might actually actively in our heart have hatred towards ourselves.
As guys, as men, do you see the emotion of pride getting in the way a lot? Because when we think about self-honesty and acceptance, that's the thought that comes to mind. Like there's a lot of guys that are too almost prideful to admit that they have certain issues. Do you see that come up in your work a lot?
The greatest blockages for men today,
Yeah.
the greatest mental blockage men have today is it's their own pride. We live in a very prideful society, and pride, people confuse pride. They think it means proud. But proud is something that if we're proud of something, we're of the heart, it's self-accomplishment. Pride's of the mind, we're self-boastful, we're elevating ourselves, think we're better than others, or our ideas are better than others. So the biggest block that the men that come to me have is it's the pride. And almost most of the very successful men that I have, financially successful men that come to me, who do have big egos, they all have knee problems. And so why do they have knee problems? Well, these emotions, they're actually stored in the body, and pride is stored in the knees. And so a man who cannot bend at the knees, bend, as like a knight before God or a king, because he's too pride, he's too stiff in the knees. He's not flexible. He's not flexible in his heart, his mind, or his body. And so, pride comes before the fall, right? In the Bible. So a man that cannot actually actively be honest with himself and acknowledge and let go of his pride and find his way back to humility and his own internal confidence is going to have a lot of hard time. He's not going to be able to see his blind spots. And he's not going to see the blind spots in his business and his relationships, and eventually falls. I see it all the time in forms of all crazy self-sabotage to multi-million-dollar guys who are doing crazy business, is they cannot own up to their own pride, and it eventually slowly kills them.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yeah, it's crazy to think that there's emotions that are specifically attached to certain parts of your body, your knees, kidneys,
Sure.
heart. But I do want to. You mentioned multimillionaires, and it made me think of something else, which is a lot of people come to you. I know this about limiting beliefs. They say, I feel like I'm stuck, and I have these limiting beliefs around money. I have these limiting beliefs around where my life can go in terms of relationships, in terms of what I want to do. How do you address that question? How do you address the limiting belief question? How do I release a limiting belief?
So most of us have limiting beliefs around money. There's about 33 abundance blocks I work with when people work with me. And these abundance blocks are really powerful. It can be anything from being afraid to fail, fear of our own financial success. But often most of this comes from old beliefs that we've had in childhood. Maybe we need to work really hard to make money, right? Rather than to have it just come easy to us. So if we want to let go of a money block and a belief we have about it, we need to actually address it and see the validity of it. Is it true? And so one of the tools I love to work with my clients through is it's called the 4 questions. And it goes like this: is the belief true? And most of us are going to hold, who are holding on to it will say, yes, of course it's true that I need to work hard to make money. But then we can ask the second question, which is it absolutely true? Well, okay, it's not absolutely true that I need to work hard to make money. It could come easy. A deal could come out of nowhere. It's possible. And we want to ask ourselves the third question, which is, well, how do I feel when I hold on to this belief? Let's say that I need to work hard to make money. And if I feel into myself right now, that sucks. That sounds frustrating and feels stuck. So we ask ourselves the fourth question, which is, if none of the above is true and it makes us feel terrible, how would it feel to let go of this limiting belief? Let's say that we have to work hard to make money. And when I do it right now, it feels liberating. It feels like things can be easy and effortless, which is the truth. And so we can set a limiting belief to a flame through the truth.
Beautiful. That's a great exercise. I've used it myself. For everyone that's watching this, try it. It's an awesome exercise. If you feel like you have a limiting belief, 4 questions to ask yourself. Is it true? Is it absolutely true? How do I feel when I believe this to be true? And number 4 is, how would I feel if I let go of this belief? And
Exactly.
It's an incredible, liberating feeling for sure. Yeah, it puts things in perspective because it also connects the rational mind, the logical mind, to the heart.
Yes.
So it's beautiful. A question I had about, people coming to you and just struggles that people have. I know a lot of people, we're here in Tulum, Mexico, and there's a lot of interesting people that come to Tulum, Mexico, to say the least. And I've heard this before with people. People will tell me, friends of mine will sometimes say, like, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I have a community. I don't feel like I really belong to a certain community. I don't really feel like I belong to a certain city. I don't really feel like I belong to a group, or I don't really feel like I have a certain meaning or purpose. Why do you think that is? When people come to you and say, I just don't feel like I belong. What does that mean to you, and why do you think they do that?
The reality is most people, when they get into their work, most people do not feel like they belong. And often it's just how we were raised. Maybe you're kind of an outcast, a black sheep. A lot of the people I work with are entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs are often, they're out of the box, they're creative, and often it's early childhood experiences that kind of shift them away from the group, the conforming, but they don't feel like they belong. And so the way to feel like, to move past that really is, it's just an emotion. It's an actual emotion. When I ask people, where do you feel like you don't belong? They say the heart. And I say, okay, just sit with it. And as they sit with that emotion in their heart and they let it dissipate, just by being with it, they start to realize actually they do belong. And at that point, it just becomes a choice. Well, you do belong. You are worthy. You are good enough. And whether you want to be part of the tribe or not is just a choice. But often not belonging is we don't feel that we're worthy to be a part of the tribe. And it's a very distinct emotion. But it's just that. It's an emotion. It's such a powerful emotion that it colors the truth in our mind and our thoughts that we don't belong. But in the end, it's the same thing. It's like saying, I'm angry. Well, that's not permanent. You're not just permanently angry.
Right.
You're not an emotion. The same way, if I say that, I don't feel like I belong. Well, you're just holding on to an emotion.
Right.
So if you can actually let go of the emotion of not belonging, you actually find a place within your heart where you realize that you are worthy of belonging.
So the emotion behind not belonging generally is unworthiness?
Yeah, it's a flavor of unworthiness, which just feels like, I don't feel like I'm worthy to belong. When you can actually let go of that emotional, energetic block, that's when you open your heart again. You can feel like, oh wow, I do have that connection to everyone. I do feel like I belong.
Amazing. I'm just met with some resistance myself when you say that, because you say it's a choice, right? It's a choice whether you want to belong or not. And I can see myself making that choice, but I can see a part of myself also holding back, saying, you don't deserve to belong. What would you say? Because I'd imagine some people will be met with some resistance and some roadblocks when they're on this journey.
So when we feel we don't deserve, it's right. It's the emotion of unworthiness. We don't feel that we're deserving. We feel that we're unworthy of belonging. But we have to ask ourselves, one, well, who's saying that, right? Maybe other people do say that. But other people don't have the power to make us feel things. We have to take responsibility for that power. So as children, we see the world almost kind of in a victim state. It's happening to us. People are making me feel this way. But as adults, you're in control of your own emotions, right? And that's our job, being able to manage our own emotions. And if we feel that we're not deserving and unworthy of something, that means that subconsciously that we're the ones saying that to ourselves. We're the ones holding on to that. And so often we get into the work, well, why do we want to hold on to feeling unworthy of belonging? Well, again, it falsely keeps us safe. It falsely keeps us small. We don't have to get our hearts broken if we open up and try again. So there's subtle, sudden little benefits to these lower emotional states.
True.
And we got to be honest with ourselves about the little hidden payoffs, I call them, that keep us there.
Right.
Could be depression, could be anxiety, anything. There's
Right.
little hidden benefits to everything. Anger.
So it's just accepting them, acknowledging those little hidden benefits, and letting them go.
And making a choice to let them go.
Making a choice to let
If
them
we
go.
find that we're suffering, or that we're in a less than a state that we want to be in, or not the financial state we want to be in, it's because we are choosing that. And so either we can believe that the world's happening to us, or that we're the creator. And as the creator, it takes a lot of responsibility. And so if you want to heal, the path really is to take responsibility for your emotions, for how you feel. And when you can do that, that's empowering. That's how you get your power back, and that's how you heal.
Amazing. Amazing. So, switching topics a little bit here, your specialty, I would say, is in energy. If there's something that you specialize in, it would be helping people change their energy. Maybe shift their energy, move up in energy. I don't know what language you use exactly, but you're an energy healer, essentially. That's the currency you work in, is energy. So just a simple question for you would be, how do we move up in energy? Or how do we move up in consciousness? And is there a distinction between energy and consciousness?
That's a great question. So the way we move up in energy is we are energy. So largely the energetical, the unit that I work in with energy is its emotional energies. So if we're holding on to subconscious, suppressed negative emotions, whether that's shame, guilt, fear, pride, anger, that means that's going to affect our energy, how we feel. There's an actual heaviness to these emotions. There's a vibrational frequency. These negative emotions, they're very heavy. So when you can let go of those negative emotions, you start to let go of those negative energies. You start to feel lighter. And that same healing process of letting go of negative emotions is actually the same spiritual process. So to let go of negative emotions is the same way to move up in consciousness. So let's say that we live in fear, right? All of us know someone who's just always in fear, right? They're afraid of the television, afraid of this, the planes. And you think about their worldview, their perspective. That's called the consciousness. Well, they see the world as a fearful place. But what if they go inside and they let go of all the fear and they actually actively choose to let it go and to break through it? Then they start to see the world differently. The world's no longer a fearful place, and it's a safe place. And so the way that the emotions we hold on to, they affect our consciousness, our perception of the world. So as you do the healing work, and as you let go of all that old trauma, it affects the way in which you see the world, the way in which you experience and feel. And even crazier is it affects the metaphysical and the things we attract. So a person that's always in fear, they're always attracting situations to make them more in fear. A person that's always pissed off, they're always about to attract something that pisses them off.
Right. It's funny when I think about the unit, the metric of energy, like you think of someone who's really depressed and think about their body language and they're kind of slumped down. There's almost like a gravitational pull to the ground.
Yes.
And there is a heaviness to them, right? There's a real heaviness to them. And then as you sort of move up that ladder of consciousness and move up that energy scale, people start just feeling lighter. It's almost like this incredible feeling that we can detect and that we can sense when we can sense a heaviness in someone, we can sense a lightness in someone, and it's very hard to mask that. So
yeah, I mean, all energy has a vibrations, and the energies that we care about in this work and the healing work is emotional energies. So largely what we work with is this tool called the Map of Consciousness. And this was created by Dr. Hawkins. There's a lot of different modern spiritual teachers that teach something similar. But every emotion has a vibration. Shame is the lowest vibrating emotion. And then we got guilt and anger and pride, and it works its way up. But these emotions, they have frequencies, and they've measured this. This is, on X-rays and MRIs. They can find the frequency of these things. But those emotions, they get stored in our body. And they're an actual energetic weight. And as you said, it actually compresses our body, our spine. Our spine is actually what we call the Kundalini. And it's this 33 vertebrae spine that the energy shoots through from the earth to the heavens through our body. And as we collect those traumas and those negative energies, we block that energy flow. And we start to feel less energetic. We start to feel less sexual, creative energy, less love, because it's blocking that energy that's so naturally running through us. But if you can actually let go of those negative frequencies by doing the healing work, you open up that Kundalini flow. And so a lot of the tools we work with in this work is it's the chakras.
Right. So is that how you describe energetic blocks? Like when we talk about energetic blocks, are you talking about those lower emotions on the map of consciousness?
Yeah, an energetic block is a negative emotion that's trapped in our body. So, you're a communications coach, right? And people come to you all the time because they're afraid to speak on camera. And if you can really get into it, there's an actual block in their body. Let's say maybe they feel they're not good enough in their throat. I helped someone with this yesterday. I helped them actually release that emotion that they weren't not good enough in their throat. And now they're speaking from their heart, rather than their mind, and their voice is deep and they're feeling light and expressive. And so when you can let go of those negative emotional blocks, you open up the energy centers in the body.
So what would you say dictates someone's vibration? What would you say dictates someone's, energy level?
Yeah, what dictates someone's vibration, the energy level, is the emotions they're carrying. Someone who's feeling, light and expressive, they have lots of positive emotions in their life. Whereas someone who's holding on to past negativity and experiences and trauma, you feel their heaviness. You feel that low vibration. You feel that depressive energy. And it's just energy that they're holding on to. It's not their soul. It's not who they are. So people can transform by doing the healing work and letting go of what they're not, which is those negative emotions.
what do you feel? What do you see are the biggest transformations when people let go of those energetic blocks? Like, what do you see? Obviously, there's a lightness that we're talking about, but is there anything else you see? Like, what are some of the results, the transformations that you see when people are lighter and people are, I guess, more, we'll call it liberated?
When people let go of their energetic blocks, they tell me for the first time they can feel their body. Maybe they let go of something in their kidney that was old anger, right, where they stored. And for the first time, they can feel that sensation in their body. And when they let go of that anger, let's call it, then they feel peace in their heart. They feel calmness within their nervous system. And their thoughts are clear. And they think more lovingly. So as they let go of the negativity, their whole physiological appearance and perspective changes. It's incredible.
Wow. So what would you say to someone that says, because you see this a lot, it's like, I feel drained, like I'm so tired, I've just been feeling drained the past few days, I feel stressed. Maybe people have kids, maybe they run a business that's super busy and it's very demanding. I just feel drained. What do you say to that, and how do people get their energy back?
Yeah, when we feel drained, it's because energy is draining from us. So we can think of ourselves up as, we're a cup overflowed, right? And if we're not having that 100% cup, it's because something is leaking out. So we got to figure out, well, what's the leaks? When are we saying, yes when we really mean no? When are we giving up our time and energy to people who we don't really want to, at the end of the day? And we need to figure out, where are we not holding ourselves accountable to our best self? And so all these things can just start to leak out of us when we're not being aware of our own energy and how, even when we're holding on to negativity, right? That's draining. Consciously holding on to old anger at people, that's draining. Holding on to fear, that's draining. So if we can actually let go of these negative emotions, which compress us physiologically in our spirit, we open ourselves up to more energy. And not just, life energy, but creative energy, sexual energy, loving energy.
Love it, man. Love it. I'd love some more sexual energy too.
We all.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of blocks around that too. Not with you, but I mean, with most men, there's crazy blocks around it.
I'm sure. I wanted to ask you about sustaining these positive feelings, right? Because it's like sometimes we'll get into modes where it's like, I'm feeling so joyful. I'm feeling so much love. I'm feeling just a lot of strength and centeredness. How do I ride this wave, man? How do I ride this momentum? How do I sustain these feel-good emotions right now?
Yeah, so a lot of people who come to these, these hoorah festivals at Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, they walk out, they feel amazing, the event was amazing, all the high energy. A few weeks later, it tapers off, right? And a lot of us have that experience where we're like, whoa, where did all my positive, amazing energy go? So we need to figure out, well, where did it leak? And often it's leaking because of the negative emotions that we're holding on to. So rather than to force ourselves to put on a smile and do jumping jacks and prop ourselves up to try to be happy, what we can do is we can just let go of where we're not happy and actually actively see where within our body that we're holding on to really comes down to these negative emotions, these weights. And as you can let go of those weights, you start to lift up. And so we call this the baseline, where maybe you wake up each day and you're feeling okay, but you let go of more stuff, you feel lighter, you start to feel happier, and each day you start to wake up and you move your baseline up where you start to vibrate at higher and higher levels, and it becomes permanent. And it becomes permanent because you've done the actual physiological energetic work of letting go of that which keeps you so weighted down every time you try to get to the light, get to that higher state. And so that's the permanency and the beautiful part about this work is it's everlasting. It's not a temporary, quick, mental fix and buzz like a drink or something.
Okay, so it's something that you can carry with you for the rest of your life. I know that.
The work pays off, and it pays in dividends. It's truly an investment of a lifetime to do this healing work, set yourself free, and you don't have to deal with it again, especially when you learn the lessons of why you maybe took it on in the first place.
Right. And would you apply those same lessons to someone who says, I feel like I'm depressed right now, I'm in a state of depression, and how long, like I've been depressed for so long, like if I'm doing this work, can I get over this depression right away? Will it come back? How would you address those depression questions?
Yeah, depression is, it's in my opinion, it's something that everybody can break, it's going to face in their life. Everybody's going to face depression, but everybody can break through it. and it's largely just a choice. When you let go of those negative emotions, let's call it apathy and hopelessness and helplessness, the emotions that actually accompany depression, which are just these energetical emotional units, you can let them go, let them relieve your body, then you no longer have that energy pull you back towards it. Energy has a gravitation to it. Depression is super heavy, and it's gonna lead you back there. But if you can kind of drain that energy, drain it as almost like it's a balloon, like hot air in a balloon. You let go of that depressive energy and the emotions behind it. It doesn't have that gravity anymore. And soon enough, you don't find yourself dropping into the depression. And if you do, you're grateful because it allows you to let go of even more energy. And so I'm very happy when there's a time in my life that really hits me and really tests me and I get down, because I know that's an element of energy and trauma that I'm holding in my past that I just need to move through once again to let it go and liberate myself. And so it becomes a gift.
That's an awesome place to be. Can we get tactical for a second? Because I want to leave people with a little bit of a tactical lesson here. We talk a lot about letting go and feeling, and you've gone into how to do it at sort of a basic level. Can we get a little bit more granular, a little bit more tactical in, okay, I'm feeling this depression. I know I'm feeling the heaviness. What do I do? What do you do?
If you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed, what we want to do is we actually want to feel it. Counterintuitively, but we want to feel it.
So just sit there.
So feeling, you close your eyes and feel in your body, where do you feel this depression, this heaviness, this sadness? And if you can find it within your body, that's great. Maybe it's in your shoulders or your thighs or your heart. And your only job is to just to sit with it. When you can sit with it fully and surrender to it, meaning you don't resist it, you don't try to push it away, you just surrender to it. That allows it to dissolve. And you give it time, be patient with it. If you find that you're doing this exercise to get rid of it, it means you're in resistance, you're not in surrender. And surrendering is the most powerful healing modality I've come across, and I've done many, healing modalities. But our ability to sit with our sadness, that heaviness, and just let it be. If you can let it be, you bring acceptance to it, which is what we're looking for anyway. These heavy parts of us, they're looking for that acceptance. And you can give it to yourself. And when you can do that, that heaviness will lift off, it'll transform, you'll feel lighter, and slowly but surely you'll move through that dark cave of depression, and you'll see the light, and it's there.
Without moralizing it too, because I know that I would try to moralize it, and I would judge it. Being non-judgmental, I think, was a key for me in helping release a lot of the stuff that I was carrying. Like, just not judging our thoughts, not judging the emotions.
Most of us are conditioned to just feel like we have to be happy all the time. Yeah. It's a very North American thing that we always have to be smiling, we always have to be our best, and we get judged and we judge ourselves if we're not happy all the time. But we're human. So rather than force yourself to putting on a smile all the time, is if you can actually be honest about how we feel, authentically, truthful, honest, and allow ourselves to sit with those human emotions of feeling down and sad and depressed. And we accept them and we transform them, we let them go and we rise above it. And so that's what's necessary, is rather than stuff it down or pretend we don't have it, it's just to allow it, to allow yourself that freedom of just feeling how you feel. And it's so liberating and it feels so good, and then the transformation happens.
Amen. I agree, man. Big time. I'm Jewish. You mentioned that at the beginning. You told it. Thanks for telling everyone. Outing my religion. You too. We're both Jewish. But no, this is on a serious note. Like, if I'm a Jew or I'm a Christian or I'm a Muslim and I practice a certain religion, I have a foundation and that I follow. Can I do this work? And I think a lot of people might be scared of that.
I work with all sorts of people of different religious faiths, whether they're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and the work that we do it's this really deep inner work. And I had the great pleasure of studying in Jerusalem for 6 months as a university student, reading the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, and seeing how beautifully that all these things point to the same truths within all the similar stories. And so this work it's transcendent. It doesn't matter your religion, your background. It works for everybody. I work with all sorts of people across the board from different faiths. And it's really just about getting within to yourself and doing the healing work and letting things go. And all sorts of things across the board, across scriptures, across religions and faiths will say the principles that we do in this work.
So you don't think it conflicts with some of the belief systems in Christianity, Islam, or Judaism?
No, not at all. I mean, sometimes in religion we get caught, in this work spirituality, we get caught up in terminologies, and we get so fixated on it. But a lot of the work that we do so as we surrender to emotions and we heal, some people call this Christ consciousness, and they view Christ as the light within us, rather than necessarily an outside being, a man coming to save us. Well, yes, but it's that being within us that's there to save us. That ability for us to heal ourselves just by surrendering ourselves, our light, and transforming that darkness. And so we can get mixed up in the words, and there's lots of religious wars in places like Jerusalem, but in the end, we're all human, and we can all do this work, and it does not conflict with our people's faith.
Right. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. So ultimately, this discussion has obviously been centered around spirituality. From your perspective, what does spiritual growth look like to you? Like, what does that really look like to you when someone says, I've really grown spiritually? Like, what does that look like? How does that manifest in the real world? Whether through business relationships or just energetically, how would you define that? How would you define that? How that growth looks?
Yeah, spiritual growth looks like maturing. I just actually sent a video to a few of my old clients I had a video from 7 months ago of, on Zoom, and they're speaking, and I was like, do you guys realize, how much more mature and you look, both in their actual body as men, how they sound in their voices and their perspective on life. And so while maybe they held on to more boyish and immature behaviors of the past that kept them small and, less than they were worth, now they're an expansion. You can see that physically. You can see it in their physiology, their eyes. You can see things flow. You can see the growth happening and their ability to express their truth. I think it was funny enough that we were talking the other day that, all these guys have girlfriends now, are dating, right? They were closed hard before, now they're open. So they expanded, they grew as men.
Okay, so you can actually see it physically. But how do you think it feels? Like, how does it feel for you when you're on your spiritual journey? You still are. But how does it feel to grow spiritually?
To grow spiritually, often, the goal is, it's enlightenment for most traditions. And I think enlightenment seems like this far-off thing that most of us don't even want to consider. But what I love about breaking down the etymology of enlightenment, right, is it becomes to become lighter, to enlighten. And as you let go of this heaviness and these emotions on this healing journey, you become lighter. And eventually you become so light that you reach, called enlightenment, right? And so that's where all of us are headed to. But it's really this beginning part of the spiritual journey, for most of us, it starts as a healing journey. Because we can let go and transform the traumas and the beliefs that shape our worldview and our perspective. We open ourselves up to more possibilities, to more of who we are, and having a greater connection with ourself, with God, the universe, with other people. And as we grow that expansiveness, that's the spiritual journey. And it feels lighter, it feels better. So as you go down the spiritual journey, it feels really empowering. It feels incredible.
Amazing. A lot of people, when they think of spirituality, they also think of things like visualization and manifestation. And I feel like that all kind of falls into the same category.
Yes.
Right? We talked a lot about letting go. We talked a lot about addressing and sitting with our emotions. We talked about the map of consciousness and removing energetic blocks. Kind of looking at the other side of things, because we're releasing a lot, we're letting go, and just the idea of letting go is allowing us to move up. But what about the idea of manifestation and visualization? How do you feel about that? Where do you view that in the realm of spirituality, and does it work?
Yeah, visualization is one of the most important tools that we use for manifestation. However, manifestation becomes very challenging when we have these energetic blocks. If it's like we're we're an antenna, and we're constantly putting out thoughts, which are these vibrations that are affecting reality. Now, consciously saying, we might be saying to ourselves consciously that we want more money, we want a beautiful relationship. But what if subconsciously a part of us, an old trauma, is saying, no, I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to face the fear of failure. So then we're putting out mixed signals to the world, both to people and the universe and God. So the first step to having a better ability to manifest is we got to clear that old energy, that old signals that are coming out that are going against what we consciously want. So the first step to really becoming an incredible manifester is that healing work. because we're clearing up those signals, we're making it more harmonic, and we're raising our vibration by letting go of that heavy energy, which makes those signals much faster and allows us to have actually greater faith. By letting go of all that stuff that blocks our heart and our own confidence in the universe, that trust, we open up ourselves to be able to use that fuel and that faith to manifest things quicker and faster and more consistently.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm almost like picturing a funnel from my feet up into my head, and if I'm manifesting almost like through my head over here, if I have all these blocks along the way, well, trauma here, trauma there, depression here, abandonment here, then it's going to be hard for me to actually have a clear funnel that allows me to manifest, right? But the more I can let go of those traumas and those blocks and that channel, that funnel, that river is way clearer for me to go boom to boom.
Yeah, so the first step to manifestation is, one, we got to clear the blocks. All the emotional stuff that we're holding on to that gets in, that starts to screw up the frequencies and how we visualize things. Because then the second thing is, we get into visualization, is we want to be very detailed about what we want. We're the creator. And so we want to, use our five senses. How do you want to feel in this experience? Emotionally, it's even, right? You could want to manifest an amazing car or relationship, but maybe you feel like this, when you get it, it sucks. So we can also just manifest how we want to feel.
Right.
How do you want to feel in a relationship? How do you want to feel with this new business opportunity? And you allow the universe, God, however you want to describe it, to fill in the rest. And that's what's fun, is it becomes, a surprise, it becomes a present. And, we all have kids inside, so don't we all just love that surprise, that getting that gift?
Totally. So how does that work then? Because is it just a matter of like us sitting here in our chairs, in our living rooms, in our bedrooms, and just thinking, I want $2 million? Like, how does that work? Like, I'm picturing $2 million in my bank account. How do we do it? How does it work? What's the process?
That's so interesting when we know, a lot of us, when I ask people, when do they have their best thoughts? What do they usually say?
Sorry?
When people have their best ideas, where do they usually get them when they say, like, stereotypically?
Came out of nowhere. In the shower.
Yeah, in the shower, right? So most of us say that we get our best thoughts in the shower. And well, why is that? Why do we get those downloads in the shower? Well, when our minds and our bodies are calm and we're at peace with ourselves, we can actually be able to receive and, to produce incredible thoughts. And that's when we're able to manifest, is when we can actually get into that headspace. Sometimes we call it beta waves scientifically. And we can get into that calmness, that stillness of the universe and match the stillness of the universe. Then we can send out those thoughts more purely and faster. And when we're in a good state, when we're feeling amazing, right, that's when we can produce really powerful thoughts in the universe. Because we're feeling good, we believe it, we're trusting, we're in faith. So the more that we can raise our vibration, the more we can just manifest so much easier and so much faster.
Beautiful. So it's like almost like ride that momentum, ride that positive momentum, take advantage of that, advantage of those positive feelings and that higher energy and that higher frequency, and manifest then.
Yeah, isn't it like, when we manifest stuff, it feels amazing. Like, it's this beautiful gift, and then it raises our vibration.
Yeah.
And then we're, raise ourselves to produce another thought and everything we want, and we get it. It becomes this upward spiral.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously we fall into suffering and we need the healing when we do the opposite.
Right.
When we lose that momentum.
Madison, what's the purpose of this whole thing? Why are we here? Why am I doing this interview with you? But more importantly, from your perspective, from a spiritual perspective, or just you as a human being, what do you think our purpose is in this life? What's the purpose of life?
I think our purpose here in this life is to learn. I really view this as we're in a giant school. We're students here, humbly speaking, and we're here to learn the lessons. And we're here to, largely those lessons are about the people that we're with, which is in our family. It's about relationships. And so most of the spiritual lessons we learn are about how to deal with people, is it not? Whether it's in our business, our romantic life, our kids. It's about the lessons we learn with other people. And it's about learning about ourselves, about what we're capable of, about how we treat others, we treat ourselves. And so the spiritual journey is largely just a chance for us just to learn more. And I believe, we've done a lot of past life work that we take those lessons, our soul does, into other lives. And we carry it. It's like we're collecting poker chips. And in this life, we learn this valuable lesson, and we take it with us. And if we didn't learn it in the next life we're going to need to repeat that lesson. We're going to need to face it again, like a test. And it's not a bad thing. It's not like you're a bad student, but it's about learning. And as we learn, we master things. And that's why in spirituality, it's we become masters and ascended masters and the whole shebang.
Dude, I gotta say, you're a great example and living proof of the work that you do. Just speaking to you now and seeing your energy, I know you, and if I said, dude, we're gonna go another 2 hours, you say, boom, let's go another 2 hours. So I think you're living proof, you're a testament to the energy work that you do, because I know you being in alignment, this is you in alignment right now. Like, you love talking about this, you live this, you love helping people with this stuff. This is your life, this is your livelihood. You love this. And when we're aligned, and this is a lesson for everyone that I've learned, is when we're aligned, our energy, man, it just becomes unlimited. And I can say that with you with 100% certainty, that I know your energy is top notch right now because you're living in alignment. So I just wanted to make that point and bring that to your attention.
I really appreciate it, man.
For sure.
It's amazing.
For sure. It was great talking to you. Thank you for sharing all this knowledge, and let's do this again soon.
Yeah, well, thank you, Max, for coming on. Thank you for your curiosity and your dedication to your own work and your own energy and all the growth I've seen within you, and you're helping other people. So thanks for opening up the discussion today, for asking the good questions, and getting everyone into the spiritual world, into healing, and things that we both know are going to help the world and people so much, right?
For sure. One of my goals is to kind of bridge the gap between the spiritual world and, what do we call it?
The physical.
The physical world. Yeah. Like, and I think I'm a good sort of medium for that. So I want to continue to do that, because I think a lot of people sort of turn their nose and their head to spirituality when they hear it. But when they start connecting the dots, and hopefully after hearing conversations like this, they start seeing that and feeling that there is really a practical truth to it all.
Yeah.
So
the world needs it. Thank you.
the world needs it. All right, Madison.
All right.
Cool.
Bye. Dude, so good.